My wife died on a cruise, and I took care of her parents for 8 years. On a business trip to Italy, I saw a woman identical to her, with another husband and triplets. I decided to follow them. And the shock was absolute when I discovered the truth. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. 8 years, 2,920 days since the Coast Guard called off the search. Since they handed me Carrie's purse, waterlogged and empty, pulled from the wreckage of Deck 7. Since I became a widower at 55, inheriting not just grief but a promise I never thought I'd have to keep. The morning routine never changes. 6:30 sharp, I unlock the front door of the house that still smells like her perfume in unexpected corners. Eleanor sits in her wheelchair by the kitchen window staring at nothing, her fingers working the hem of a blanket that's been washed so many times it's lost all color. She's 78 now, though some days she thinks she's 25 and waiting for her daughter to come home from nursing school. "Carrie's coming today, isn't she?" Eleanor asks, her voice thin as tissue paper. "She promised to bring those cookies I like." I pour her morning pills into my palm. 12 different medications, 4 times a day. The pharmacy bill alone runs $800 monthly, even with Medicare. "Maybe later, Eleanor. Let's focus on breakfast first." Frank shuffles in from the bedroom, his walker scraping against the hardwood floors we refinished together back when I thought my biggest problem was choosing between oak and maple. His stroke 2 years ago left him confused about time, but crystal clear about his resentment. He knows I'm not his son-in-law anymore. I'm just the man who stayed. "You don't have to be here," he tells me every morning, the same script. "We can manage." They can't. Frank can barely dress himself, and Eleanor forgot how to work the stove 6 months ago. But I nod and help him into his chair, the same chair where Carrie used to curl up reading medical journals, planning our retirement. We were going to travel, see the northern lights, buy a cabin in Vermont. Instead, I measure out insulin and count pills and pretend not to notice when Eleanor calls me by her late husband's name. The house feels smaller every day. I sold my place 3 years ago when the medical bills started crushing them. Moved into Carrie's childhood bedroom, sleeping under posters of horses and movie stars she'd outgrown decades before she died. The mortgage here runs $2,000 a month, money I earn working part-time at the hardware store, a job that pays barely enough to cover groceries and gas. Our old friends stopped visiting after the 2nd year. Hard to blame them. What do you say to a man caring for his dead wife's parents? How long is grief supposed to last before it becomes something else? Something unhealthy? I'm loading the dishwasher when I find Eleanor's pill organizer empty. She's supposed to take her heart medication with breakfast, but the little Tuesday compartment gapes open. I check the floor, the table, under her chair. Nothing. "Eleanor, did you take your pills already?" She looks at me with those cloudy blue eyes that were once sharp enough to spot a lie from 3 rooms away. "What pills?" "I don't take pills. I'm not sick." This is how it happens now. Memory slots closing one by one until eventually she won't remember Carrie at all. Won't remember why a strange man brings her breakfast and sorts her medications and sits with her during the long afternoons when Frank naps and the house settles into silence so complete it feels like being buried alive. I find the pills scattered behind her wheelchair. She must have tried to take them herself and dropped the organizer. I gather them carefully, checking each one against the pharmacy labels. The blood thinner looks different than usual, smaller. I make a note to call Dr. Martinez. By noon, Frank is agitated. He wants to drive to the bank, something about checking on investments that were liquidated years ago to pay for Eleanor's specialist. I explain again that his license was revoked, that I handle the finances now, that the money he's worried about went to keeping them in their own home instead of a facility. "You're stealing from us," he says, not for the first time. "Carrie never trusted you with money." The accusation hits the same nerve it always does. Carrie never trusted me with anything important. Never included me in decisions about her parents' care, their finances, their futures. She handled everything, controlled everything, and then disappeared into the Atlantic Ocean, leaving me with a promise I'd made half asleep on a random Tuesday morning. "If anything happens to me, you'll take care of them, won't you?" she'd said, not looking up from her medical journal. "They have no one else." I'd agreed without thinking, the way you agree when someone asks if you'd die for them. Of course you would. But living for them day after day, year after year, watching them fade while your own life disappears, that's different. That's harder. The phone rings. Dr. Martinez's office, confirming Eleanor's appointment next week. More tests, more pills, more conversations about quality of life and difficult decisions. I schedule the appointment and add it to the calendar that's become my Bible, every square filled with medical visits and pharmacy runs and social worker check-ins. After lunch, I sit at the kitchen table with the bills spread in front of me like evidence of failure. The mortgage payment is due in 6 days. The electric bill is overdue. Frank's physical therapy costs $150 per session, twice a week, because insurance decided he's improved enough to cut coverage. I open the bank statement with the same sick anticipation I've felt for years. Checking account balance, $1,437. Savings account, 0. Carrie had a life insurance policy through the hospital where she worked. $200,000 that should have solved everything, but the insurance company fought the claim for 3 years, saying there wasn't enough evidence of death. No body, no conclusive proof she didn't stage her own disappearance. By the time they finally paid, the legal fees and accumulated debt had devoured most of it. I close the statement and lean back in the chair that's seen 25 years of family dinners, birthday celebrations, Christmas mornings. Carrie's chair, still positioned at the perfect angle to see both the stove and whoever's coming through the front door. She was always watching, always managing, always 3 steps ahead of everyone else. In the afternoon quiet, with Eleanor dozing and Frank muttering at the television, I allow myself 5 minutes of dangerous thinking. What if I hadn't made that promise? What if I'd helped them find a good facility and kept my own life? What if I'd honored Carrie's memory without sacrificing my future? But then Eleanor wakes up crying, confused about where she is, calling for her daughter, and I go to her like I always do because that's who I am. The man who stays. The man who keeps promises even when they're killing him slowly, one day at a time. The mail brings another piece of the past today. A thick envelope from a law firm in Boston with my name typed in formal letters that make my stomach clench. Inside, documents about the estate of someone I've never heard of. Theodore Cromwell, apparently my late uncle on my mother's side, a man who died 3 months ago and left me $150,000. I read the letter twice before the words sink in. Uncle Theodore, my mother's brother who moved to Italy 30 years ago and sent Christmas cards signed with just his initials. The uncle I met once at a funeral when I was 12, who smelled like pipe tobacco and spoke with an accent I couldn't place. The inheritance comes with one condition. I have to travel to Florence to sign papers and meet with his Italian attorney. Something about properties that need to be evaluated and decisions that require my presence. Eleanor calls from the living room, her voice sharp with panic. "Walter! Walter, there's a man in the house!" I fold the letter and put it in my pocket. Frank has wandered into the hallway again, confused and looking for the bathroom that's been in the same place for 40 years. I guide him back, reset Eleanor's anxiety with gentle words and her afternoon medication, and return to the kitchen where the inheritance letter waits like a door I'm afraid to open. $150,000, enough to secure Eleanor and Frank's care for years, enough to give me a chance at something resembling a life. But Italy, a trip that would mean leaving them for, at least a week, trusting their care to strangers, breaking the routine that's held us all together for 8 years. I read the letter one more time, focusing on the deadline. I have 60 days to claim the inheritance, or it goes to charity. 60 days to decide if I'm brave enough to step outside this house, this responsibility, this life I never chose but have worn like a uniform for so long I've forgotten what I look like without it. The sun sets early in October, casting long shadows through windows that need cleaning. Eleanor asks about Carrie again, the same question that punctuates every day like a heartbeat. Frank falls asleep in his chair, his breathing rough and labored. And I sit at the kitchen table staring at documents that promise freedom I'm not sure I remember how to use. Tomorrow I'll call the lawyer in Florence. I'll ask about timing, about how long I'd need to stay, about whether this impossible gift might finally be the answer to prayers I stopped believing anyone was listening to. Tonight, though, I fold the letter carefully and put it in the drawer with all the other papers that document our slow decline. Next to Carrie's death certificate, her insurance papers, the medical bills that never stop coming. 8 years of faithful service, 8 years of putting her parents first, honoring her memory, keeping a promise that's cost me everything I thought I wanted. Maybe it's time to find out what I want now. The flight to Florence takes 14 hours with a connection in Frankfurt. 14 hours of recycled air and airline coffee, reading the same magazine page 12 times while my mind spins through everything that could go wrong back home. I've left Eleanor and Frank with Martha Henley, a retired nurse who costs $150 a day, but came highly recommended by their doctor. Before leaving, I spent 2 days writing detailed instructions. Eleanor's pills sorted by time and color, Frank's bathroom schedule mapped to the hour, emergency numbers taped to every surface. Martha listened patiently and assured me she'd managed worse cases, but I caught her studying the list with the expression of someone realizing she'd underestimated the job. "They're not difficult," I'd explained, watching Frank try to put his shoes on the wrong feet for the 3rd time. Just, particular about routine. Now somewhere over the Atlantic at 30,000 feet, I wonder if this trip is the most selfish thing I've done in 8 years. The inheritance could wait, couldn't it? Uncle Theodore has been dead for 3 months already. What's another few weeks? But the lawyer's email had been clear. The Italian courts move slowly, and if I miss this window, the estate will be tied up for years. $150,000. Enough to secure Eleanor and Frank's future, to maybe buy myself a small apartment somewhere, to stop counting pills and measuring my life in medical appointments. I sleep fitfully and dream of Carrie. She's standing on the deck of a cruise ship, wearing the blue dress she loved, waving goodbye. In the dream, I'm trying to reach her, but the deck keeps getting longer, the distance between us stretching like taffy. She's saying something I can't hear over the sound of the ocean. I wake as we descend into Florence, the Tuscan countryside spread below like a postcard. Rolling hills dotted with cypress trees, red-tiled roofs catching the morning sun, vineyards arranged in precise geometric patterns. It's nothing like the gray October I left behind in Massachusetts. The Hotel Davanzati sits in the heart of the historic district, a converted Renaissance palace where every surface tells a story I don't know how to read. My room is small but elegant, with windows that open onto a narrow street where Vespas navigate between pedestrians like schools of fish. The sound is constant but somehow soothing. Voices calling in Italian, church bells marking the hours, the clip-clop of horses pulling tourist carriages. I shower off the airplane smell and change into the one good shirt I packed. The lawyer expects me at 10:30, which gives me an hour to walk through the city and remember what it feels like to move without purpose, to see things that aren't medical equipment or grocery lists. Florence assaults the senses in ways I'd forgotten cities could. The smell of fresh bread from bakeries that have occupied the same corners for centuries. Coffee so strong it makes my eyes water. Leather goods displayed in shop windows, their rich scent mixing with the exhaust from tour buses and the green smell of the Arno River. I follow the tourist maps toward the Duomo, joining streams of visitors who photograph everything and understand nothing, myself included. The cathedral's facade is intricate beyond comprehension, every inch carved with figures and patterns that seem to shift when I'm not looking directly at them. It's beautiful and overwhelming and completely foreign to my world of pill organizers and medical appointments. That's when I see her. She's standing near the fountain, maybe 50 yards away, laughing at something one of 3 small children has done. The sound carries over the crowd noise, clear and familiar as my own heartbeat. I know that laugh. I've been hearing it in my dreams for 8 years. My legs stop working. People flow around me like water around a stone, chattering in languages I don't recognize. But I can't move, can't breathe, can't process what I'm seeing. It's Carrie, not someone who looks like her, not a trick of light or wishful thinking or grief-induced hallucination. It's Carrie, my wife, standing in the Italian sunshine playing with 3 children who look exactly like her, while a tall man with graying temples watches with the expression of someone completely, utterly happy. She's wearing clothes I've never seen, expensive-looking things that fit her perfectly. Her hair is shorter, styled differently, but it catches the light the same way it did when she was 25, and we were planning a future that ended in the North Atlantic. She moves with the same quick grace, gestures with her hands when she talks, tilts her head when one of the children demands her attention. The man beside her, dark hair, athletic build, probably my age, puts his arm around her shoulders with casual ownership. She leans into him like it's natural, like she's been doing it for years. One of the children, a little girl with Carrie's nose and chin, tugs at her dress and points at the pigeons. Carrie bends down, scoops the child up, spins her around until they're both dizzy. I watch this scene from across the piazza like I'm watching a movie of someone else's life. The man who looks like a husband, the children who look like his children, the woman who looks exactly like my dead wife, living a life I never knew existed. They start walking toward the cathedral, the little family group moving with easy coordination. The man carries one child on his shoulders while Carrie holds hands with the other 2. They're heading directly toward me, and I should move, should do something, but my brain has stopped sending signals to my body. As they get closer, I can see details that make my chest tighten. The small scar on Carrie's left hand from when she cut herself making dinner our 2nd year of marriage. The way she walks with her left foot turned slightly outward, the result of breaking her ankle in college. The birthmark on her neck, just below her right ear, shaped like a crescent moon. It's her. There's no doubt, no room for rationalization or denial. My wife, who died 8 years ago, is alive and walking through Florence with another man's children, wearing another man's ring on her finger. They pass within 10 feet of me. I catch a fragment of her voice as she tells one of the children to stay close, speaking in accented English that sounds almost native. She doesn't see me. Her attention is completely focused on the family around her, the life she's built, the identity she's chosen. I follow them, not consciously, not with any plan or intention, but my feet start moving and suddenly I'm part of the tourist flow, heading toward the cathedral entrance. I keep my distance, hiding behind tour groups and vendor stalls, but I can't stop watching her. The way she automatically checks to make sure all 3 children are accounted for. How she shares a look with the man that speaks of private jokes and shared understanding. The comfortable intimacy of people who've known each other long enough to communicate without words. They don't enter the cathedral. Instead, they turn down a side street lined with gelato shops and souvenir stands. The man buys ice cream for everyone, and they sit at a small table outside a cafe while the children make sticky messes and demand napkins. Carrie wipes faces and mediates disputes and looks for all the world like a mother who's been doing this job for years. I position myself at a newspaper stand across the street, pretending to browse headlines in Italian while keeping them in my peripheral vision. My hands are shaking so badly I can't hold the pages steady. The man's phone rings. He answers in rapid Italian, his expression shifting from relaxed to concerned. Work crisis by the look of it. He speaks to Carrie in English now, something about needing to handle a problem at the office. She nods, tells him to go, gestures to the children with the universal language of, "I've got this." He kisses her goodbye. Not a quick peck, but the kind of kiss that belongs to people who still like each other after years of marriage. She watches him walk away with an expression I recognize, but have never seen directed at me. Pure, uncomplicated love. I buy a newspaper I can't read and sit at a cafe table with a view of theirs. Order espresso I don't want and try to look like a tourist taking a break instead of a man whose entire understanding of reality has just been detonated. Carrie is 30 yards away, alive and beautiful and completely absorbed in a life that has nothing to do with me. She's forgotten I exist, forgotten Eleanor and Frank exist, forgotten the promises she made and the responsibilities she left behind. While I've spent 8 years maintaining her parents' medications and mortgage payments, she's been building a new family in a country where no one knows her real name. One of the children, a boy with her eyes and stubborn chin, drops his gelato on the ground and starts to cry. Carrie doesn't get frustrated or annoyed. She simply orders another one, cleans up the mess, and distracts him with a game involving counting pigeons. The scene is so normal, so maternal, so completely at odds with the woman I thought I knew. My Carrie never wanted children. We tried for years, went through fertility treatments that emptied our savings and left her exhausted and bitter. She blamed me, blamed her body, blamed the universe for denying her the one thing she wanted most. After the fifth miscarriage, she stopped talking about it entirely, threw herself into her nursing career, and became someone who took care of other people's families instead of building her own. But here she is, mothering 3 children who call her Mama in accented English, who compete for her attention and cuddle against her when they're tired. Children who look enough like her to be hers, who are young enough to have been born after she died. I take out my phone and aim it toward their table, pretending to photograph the cathedral in the background. Through the zoom lens, I can see her face clearly for the first time in 8 years. She looks younger somehow, despite the passage of time. Relaxed in a way I never saw during our marriage. The lines of constant stress that had started appearing around her eyes in her 40s are gone, replaced by laugh lines and the kind of glow that comes from being deeply, genuinely happy. The children finish their gelato and start getting restless. Carrie checks her watch, an expensive-looking thing I don't recognize, and starts gathering their belongings. They're leaving, and I haven't decided what to do with this impossible information. I could approach her now, walk across the street, say her name, watch her face, as she realizes her old life has found her new one. But what then? What do you say to a woman who let you believe she was dead? How do you ask someone why they chose to orphan their parents and abandon their spouse for a fresh start in Tuscany? Instead, I follow them again. They walk through narrow streets that smell like garlic and wine, past shops selling handmade paper and leather goods, until they reach a small parking area where a dark blue Mercedes waits. Carrie loads the children into car seats with practiced efficiency while they chatter about their day, switching between English and Italian like children who've grown up bilingual. Before getting into the driver's seat, she takes a long look around the piazza. For one heart-stopping moment, her eyes sweep past me, and I think she's seen me, recognized me, that this impossible reunion is about to become real. But her gaze moves on without stopping, and she gets into the car like nothing has happened. I watch the Mercedes disappear into Florence traffic, carrying my supposedly dead wife and her secret family toward a life I know nothing about. I sit on a bench in the empty piazza for a long time after they're gone, trying to make sense of what I've witnessed. The woman I've grieved for 8 years isn't dead. She's living 10 minutes from where I'm supposed to sign inheritance papers, raising children who have never heard of Eleanor or Frank or the man who promised to take care of them forever. My phone buzzes with a text from Martha. Eleanor asking for you. Frank had small incident, but fine now. When coming home? I stare at the message, at the life waiting for me back in Massachusetts, and realize that everything I thought I knew about duty and loyalty and keeping promises has just been turned inside out. Carrie chose this life. Chose to let me believe she was dead rather than simply ask for a divorce. Chose to let her parents decline without their daughter's support rather than find a way to help them transition to professional care. She chose to let me sacrifice 8 years of my own life for a lie. I delete Martha's text without responding and walk back toward the hotel, my mind already working on what I need to do next. Find out where she lives. Learn about this new identity she's created. Understand the full scope of what she's built on the foundation of my grief. Tomorrow, I'll sign the inheritance papers and take possession of Uncle Theodore's money. But tonight, I'm going to figure out how to reclaim my wife from the dead. The law office of Benedetti and Associates sits in a converted Renaissance palazzo, all marble floors, and frescoed ceilings that make you whisper even when there's nothing secret to discuss. I sign the inheritance papers with hands that still shake from yesterday's revelation, barely listening as the elderly lawyer explains property details and tax obligations in careful English. Uncle Theodore left me more than money. There's a small apartment in the Oltrarno district, rented to an artist who pays €500 monthly. A wine shop near the Mercato Centrale that generates steady income, properties that tie me to Florence for reasons I'm only beginning to understand. Your uncle, he was very specific about the timing, Signor Benedetti says, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. He wanted you to come here personally to see what he built. Strange, no? A man you barely knew, leaving you a life in Italy. I nod and sign another document, my attention split between legal formalities and the impossible knowledge that my dead wife lives somewhere in this city. The lawyer hands me keys to properties I never asked for and an envelope thick with documents I'll need to study later. There is one more thing, he says, producing a smaller envelope marked with my name in Uncle Theodore's spidery handwriting. A personal letter. He insisted I give this to you after the legalities were complete. I pocket the letter without reading it. Right now, I need information about someone else entirely. Signor Benedetti, I'm looking for someone who might live here in Florence, an American woman married to an Italian man with young children. I have lost touch with an old friend. His expression grows cautious. Florence is not so large, but finding someone without more details. He shrugs apologetically. I describe the man I saw with Carrie. Tall, graying hair, expensive clothes, the kind of bearing that suggests professional success. The lawyer's face shifts slightly. This sounds perhaps like someone in business, yes? The American community here, it is small but well-connected. There is a private investigator I sometimes recommend for delicate family matters. Giulia Rossi, very professional, very discreet. He writes down a name and phone number on expensive letterhead. I thank him and leave with more questions than answers, walking through streets that felt magical yesterday and oppressive today. Giulia Rossi works from an office above a leather goods shop, reached by climbing 3 flights of narrow stairs that smell like coffee and cigarettes. She's younger than I expected, maybe 40, with sharp eyes and the kind of directness that comes from dealing with people's secrets professionally. American woman, 3 children, Italian husband, she repeats after I give her the basic information. You said she might be using a different name now. I hesitate, then decide on a version of the truth that won't make me sound insane. She was married before, to someone else. There was a difficult divorce. She may have changed her identity for privacy reasons. Giulia nods, like this is perfectly normal. It happens more than you think. People come to Italy to start over. The bureaucracy here, it's complicated enough that someone with determination and money can disappear quite effectively. She quotes me a fee that makes me wince, €800 for a comprehensive search, payable in advance. I think of Eleanor's medicine costs, Frank's physical therapy bills, the mortgage payment due next week. Then I think of Carrie laughing with children who should have been ours, living in luxury while I count pills and measure my life in medical appointments. I pay her in cash from Uncle Theodore's emergency fund. I need photographs if you have them, she says. Recent ones would be best, but anything that shows her clearly. I hand her my phone, scrolling to the pictures I took yesterday at the cafe. Giulia studies them with professional interest, zooming in on Carrie's face, noting details I hadn't consciously registered. Beautiful woman, expensive clothes, quality jewelry. This man with her, he has money. The car they left in, a Mercedes, you said? That narrows things considerably. She promises results within 48 hours and asks where I'm staying. I give her the hotel information and walk back through the city with the strange sensation of having set something irreversible in motion. That evening, I sit in my hotel room reading Uncle Theodore's letter. His handwriting is difficult to decipher, made worse by what appears to be Parkinson's disease, but the message is clear enough. Walter, I know we barely knew each other, but family is family. I've been watching your life from here, through Christmas cards and family gossip, and I see a man who's forgotten how to live for himself. Italy teaches you that life is meant to be tasted, not endured. This inheritance isn't charity. It's an opportunity. Take it. He goes on to describe the properties, the income they generate, the possibility of a different kind of future. But it's the last paragraph that stops me cold. I heard about Carrie's accident. Terrible thing losing someone so young, but Walter, sometimes the dead aren't as gone as we think. Sometimes they're just living different lives. I hope you find the peace you deserve, whatever form it takes. I read that paragraph 3 times, trying to decode what he might have known or suspected. Uncle Theodore died 3 months ago. The will was written 2 years before that. Did he somehow know Carrie was alive? Or is this just the rambling philosophy of an old man who'd seen enough of life to know its secrets? My phone buzzes with a text from Martha. Eleanor had good day. Frank asking when you come home. All fine, but they miss routine. I stare at the message for a long time before typing back. Few more days. Thank you for everything. The next morning brings rain. The kind of steady drizzle that turns Florence's ancient stones slippery and treacherous. I walks, anyway, needing movement to quiet the questions circling in my head like vultures. 8 years of grief, 8 years of sacrifice, 8 years of believing I was honoring her memory while she was building a new life 6,400 miles away. I find myself at the Ponte Vecchio watching tourists photograph the jewelry shops that line the medieval bridge. Couples pose for selfies, their faces bright with the kind of happiness that belongs to people whose biggest worry is choosing the right filter for their vacation photos. A family passes by, mother, father, 2 young children arguing over gelato flavors. The mother has dark hair like Carrie's, and for one heart-stopping moment I think it might be her. Think I've stumbled across them again by accident. But when she turns, it's a stranger's face, kind but unfamiliar. How many times over the years have I seen her in crowds, in grocery stores, in the peripheral vision that tricks grieving minds into false hope? How many women have I followed for half a block before realizing they were someone else entirely, leaving me hollow with disappointment? Except yesterday wasn't false hope or wishful thinking. Yesterday was real. Julia calls that afternoon with the efficiency of someone who takes pride in delivering results quickly. I found them, she says without preamble. Maria Elena Rossi, that's the name she's using now, married to Lorenzo Benedetti, a successful architect. They live in a villa in the hills above Fiesole, quite exclusive. The children are triplets born 6 years ago, according to public records. My legs give out and I sit heavily on the hotel room's narrow bed. Triplets. Born 6 years ago, 2 years after Carrie supposedly drowned. Children she conceived and carried and delivered while I was learning to manage Eleanor's medications and Frank's physical therapy schedule. The marriage license was filed 7 years ago, Julia continues, but there are some irregularities in her documentation. The birth certificate showing her as Maria Elena Rossi appears to be authentic, but it was issued only 8 years ago, replacing documents that were supposedly lost in a fire. Very convenient. What about before that? Her life in America? Nothing official. If Maria Elena Rossi existed before 8 years ago, she left no paper trail. It's as if she materialized fully formed with a new identity and a romantic history with Lorenzo Benedetti. 8 years ago. The exact timeline of Carrie's death. The woman who drowned in the North Atlantic was reborn in Tuscany with a new name, a new husband, and a fertility she'd never had with me. There's something else, Julia says. I've been asking discreet questions in their neighborhood. The story is that Maria Elena was a nurse who met Lorenzo when he was recovering from a skiing accident. She saved his life. They fell in love. Classic romance. But the details are vague and no one seems to know where exactly this happened. Skiing accident. I remember Carrie's nursing skills, how capable she was in medical emergencies, how she'd always known exactly what to do when someone was hurt or sick. She'd have been the perfect person to care for an injured, wealthy man in a foreign country. Do you want me to continue digging? Julia asks. I can find out more about Lorenzo's business, their financial situation, where exactly they met. Yes, I say, my voice stronger than I feel. Everything you can find. After she hangs up, I sit in the growing darkness of my hotel room, processing what I've learned. Carrie didn't just survive that cruise ship accident, she planned it. Created a new identity, established a new history, found a new husband, and had the children she'd always claimed she couldn't have. while I spent 8 years thinking I was honoring her memory. I call Martha to check on Eleanor and Frank. Everything is fine, she reports, but Eleanor is becoming more confused about where I am. She keeps asking when Carrie is coming home. She had a moment of clarity yesterday, Martha explains. Asked me directly if Carrie was really dead or just gone. I didn't know what to say. Eleanor, with her failing mind and fading memory, has stumbled closer to the truth than any of us realized. That night, I lie awake listening to Florence's nocturnal sounds, moped engines echoing off narrow walls, voices calling in Italian from apartments whose windows stay open to catch any breeze, church bells marking hours that feel endless. Tomorrow, Julia will have more information. Tomorrow, I'll know more about the life Carrie built on the ashes of mine. But tonight, I'm still just a man whose dead wife turned out to be living a better life without him. The rain stops sometime before dawn, leaving the air clean and sharp with the promise of sunlight. I order coffee from room service and sit by the window watching Florence wake up. Shopkeepers rolling up metal shutters, delivery trucks navigating streets designed for horses and carriages, early tourists consulting maps and guidebooks. Somewhere in those hills beyond the city, Carrie is probably making breakfast for children who call her Mama, getting them ready for school or daycare, living the domestic life she claimed to want but never achieved with me. Lorenzo is probably reading the financial pages over espresso, planning his day of architectural consultations, secure in the knowledge that his wife loves him completely. Neither of them knows that their carefully constructed new world is about to collide with the old one they thought they'd left behind forever. My phone rings. Julia again, calling earlier than expected. I have the address, she says. Villa Benedetti, number 47, Via della Colline. Very private road, very exclusive neighborhood. But Walter, there's something you should know before you decide what to do with this information. What? Lorenzo's business is in trouble. Serious financial problems, according to my sources. The kind that might make someone desperate enough to do things they normally wouldn't consider. What kind of things? The kind that require access to money from previous lives. I understand immediately. Carrie has something Lorenzo needs, access to funds from her old identity, her American life, the insurance money and inheritance she might still have legal claim to. Are you saying she might be planning to come back, to resurface? I'm saying desperate people make unpredictable choices, and if Lorenzo's business fails, your Maria Elena might need to remember how to be Carrie again. After she hangs up, I dress carefully and walk through Florence one more time as a tourist, a man with nothing more complicated to worry about than choosing between museums and restaurants. Tomorrow, I'll have to decide what to do with the knowledge I've gained, how to use the information Julia has provided, whether to confront Carrie directly or find another way to reclaim the 8 years she stole from me. But today, I'm going to look at the city she chose over the life we'd built together. I'm going to understand what was so appealing about this place that it was worth faking her own death to have it. By evening, I think I understand. Florence is a city where reinvention feels not just possible, but inevitable. Every street corner holds centuries of stories, layers of history where new identities have been built on the foundations of old ones for 1,000 years. It's the perfect place to become someone else entirely. The perfect place to forget you were ever someone's wife. Villa Benedetti sits on a winding road that climbs through olive groves and cypress trees, the kind of approach that gives you time to change your mind with every curve. I've driven this route 3 times in 2 days, each time losing my courage before reaching the ornate iron gates that guard the property. Today feels different. Today I'm not turning back. The rental car's GPS speaks to me in Italian-accented English, counting down kilometers until I reach the address Julia provided. My hands are steady on the steering wheel, but my heart pounds with the rhythm of a man approaching his own execution. Through the gaps in the trees, I catch glimpses of the villa, honey-colored stone, red tile roof, the kind of architectural harmony that speaks of centuries of careful maintenance and considerable wealth. This is what Carrie chose over mortgage payments and pill organizers. This is what was worth letting me believe she was dead. I park across from the gates and sit in the car for 20 minutes, watching. At 10:15, the gates swing open automatically and the dark blue Mercedes emerges, Carrie behind the wheel. She's alone this time, no children in the back seat, no husband in the passenger seat. Just my supposedly dead wife, driving down a Tuscan hillside on a Tuesday morning in October. I follow at a distance, keeping 2 cars between us as we descend into Fiesole proper. She parks near the market square and walks toward a small cafe, moving with the confidence of someone who knows exactly where she belongs. I park illegally and hurry after her, my mouth dry as sand. She orders at the counter in fluent Italian, laughing at something the barista says, completely at ease in this life she's built. When she sits at a small table outside, I force my legs to carry me forward. "Hello, Carrie." She freezes with her espresso cup halfway to her lips. For one infinite moment, she's trapped between her old identity and new one, unable to pretend she doesn't know me, unable to maintain the fiction that Maria Elena Rossi has never heard the name Carrie spoken with an American accent. Then she sets the cup down carefully and looks at me with eyes I remember from 1,000 mornings, 1,000 conversations, 1,000 promises about growing old together. "You're supposed to be dead," she says quietly. "Funny, I was thinking the same thing about you." Her face cycles through expressions: shock, fear, calculation, resignation. She gestures to the chair across from her like we're old friends meeting for coffee instead of a man confronting his supposedly deceased wife. "How did you find me?" I sit down, noting details I couldn't see from across the piazza that first day. The wedding ring on her left hand, different from the one I gave her, the expensive watch, the subtle makeup, the confidence that comes from years of successful deception. Does it matter? I'm here. You're here. We both know what that means. She glances around the cafe, checking to see who might be listening, who might witness whatever comes next, the survival instinct of someone who's been living a lie for 8 years. "Walter, you don't understand." "I understand plenty. I understand that while I've been taking care of your parents, you've been playing house with someone else. I understand that you let me believe you were dead rather than simply asking for a divorce. I understand that you had children with him after telling me for 15 years that you couldn't get pregnant." The last accusation hits like a physical blow. She flinches, her carefully maintained composure cracking just enough to let me see the woman I used to know hiding underneath. "The children aren't mine," she says quietly. I stare at her. "What?" "They're Lorenzo's. From his previous marriage. Their mother died in a car accident when they were babies." She meets my eyes, daring me to call her a liar. "I adopted them legally. They call me Mama because I'm the only mother they remember." The simple explanation shifts everything I thought I knew about this new life of hers. Not the fertility miracle I'd imagined, not the fresh start with babies who proved she could have what she'd always wanted. Just a widowed man who needed someone to help raise his children and a woman desperate enough to fake her own death for the chance. "That doesn't change anything else," I say, though my voice has lost some of its edge. "You're still alive. You still let me believe you were dead." She looks away, watching pedestrians navigate the narrow streets of Fiesole like she's memorizing escape routes. "I was drowning, Walter." "In the cruise ship accident?" "Because I read the reports." "No." She turns back to me, her voice sharp. "I was drowning in our life, in taking care of my parents, in pretending to be happy, and watching you be content with a marriage that was killing me slowly." The words land like slaps. 25 years of marriage reduced to suffocation, to a life she couldn't wait to escape. You could have talked to me. We could have worked it out, gotten counseling, figured something out that didn't involve faking your death and abandoning your responsibilities. She laughs, but there's no humor in it. "When, Walter? Between my mother's doctor appointments and my father's physical therapy? Between your job and the house and the bills and all the things that had to be done every single day? When exactly were we supposed to have that conversation?" "We were partners, Carrie. We were supposed to figure things out together." "We were never partners. I managed everything, made all the decisions, carried all the weight, and you You went along with whatever I decided, because it was easier than taking responsibility yourself. The accusation stings, because there's truth in it. I had let her manage our life, handle the difficult conversations with her parents, make the hard decisions about their care. I'd been the supportive husband who agreed with whatever she thought was best. So you decided to disappear instead of asking for help? I decided to take the only opportunity I'd ever had to choose my own life. She leans forward, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. Do you know what it's like to realize at 50 that you've never made a single decision based on what you wanted? That every choice you've ever made was about duty or obligation or what other people needed from you? I know what it's like to spend 8 years honoring a promise to a dead woman who turned out to be alive and selfish. The word selfish hits its target. She sits back like I've struck her, color draining from her face. Your parents are dying, Carrie. Eleanor has Alzheimer's. She asks for you every day. Frank had a stroke 2 years ago and barely recognizes me half the time. But I'm still there, still taking care of them, still keeping the promise I made to someone who apparently never existed. Tears gather in her eyes, the first crack in her composure since I sat down. How are they? Really? Dying slowly and expensively. The house is mortgaged to pay for their care. I work part-time at a hardware store to cover their medications. I haven't had a day off in 3 years because I can't afford to hire help. She covers her face with her hands, shoulders shaking slightly. For a moment, she's not Maria Elena Rossi, successful expatriate living the Tuscan dream. She's Carrie, the woman who used to cry when she thought about her parents getting old. I never meant for it to go on this long, she whispers. How long did you mean for it to go on? How long were you planning to let me sacrifice my life for your lie? She doesn't answer immediately. When she looks up, her eyes are red but determined. I met Lorenzo on the cruise. He was traveling with friends, recovering from his wife's death. We talked one night, just talked, but it was the first real conversation I'd had with a man in years. The first time someone saw me as something other than a daughter, or a wife, or a nurse. So you fell in love and decided to fake your own death? Just like that? Not just like that. I spent months planning it, getting the documentation, setting up accounts, making sure everything would work. She pauses, seeming to realize how calculated that sounds. The accident part was real, Walter. There really was an emergency on the ship, but instead of trying to help, I jumped. The simple confession hangs between us like a bomb waiting to explode. She jumped, abandoned ship while other people were dying, used their tragedy as cover for her disappearance. People died in that accident, Carrie. I know. I think about it every day. Her voice is barely audible. But I was already dead, Walter. Had been for years. I was just making it official. While I was making it real. 8 years of grief, 8 years of guilt, 8 years of believing I should have somehow saved you. I never asked you to grieve for me. The casual cruelty of the statement takes my breath away. You didn't ask me not to, either. You let me believe you were dead. You let your parents believe their daughter was gone forever. And what was I supposed to do? Come back and explain that I'd rather be dead than live the life I had? Destroy Lorenzo's happiness and the children's stability just so you could feel better about your choices? My choices? I lean forward, anger finally overriding shock. What choices did I have? You disappeared and left me with all the responsibilities. You made the choice to leave, and I had to live with the consequences. You could have put them in a facility. You could have moved on, found someone new, built a different life. On what money? With what time? And how exactly was I supposed to move on from my wife's death when I was still taking care of her parents every single day? She has no answer for that. For the first time since I sat down, she looks genuinely ashamed. Lorenzo doesn't know, she says quietly. About you, about my parents, about any of it. He thinks my family is dead, that I had no one before I met him. How convenient. It's not convenient, it's necessary. He's a good man, Walter. He deserves better than the truth about what I did. And I deserved better than 8 years of lies. But here we R. A long silence stretches between us. Around us, life in Fiesole continues. Shopkeepers opening their stores, tourists consulting guidebooks, normal people living normal lives that don't involve confronting the dead over coffee. "What do you want?" she asks finally. It's the question I've been asking myself since the moment I saw her in the piazza. What do I want? Justice? Revenge? An apology? The 8 years back? Some acknowledgement of what her choices cost me? I want you to face what you did. To your parents, to me, to the life you threw away like it meant nothing. And then what? You expose me? Destroy my marriage? Traumatize 3 children who call me mama? Does that give you back the years you lost? It gives me the truth. It gives your parents the chance to see their daughter before they die. It gives me the right to stop pretending I'm honoring your memory when you're alive and happy in Italy. She reaches across the table and touches my hand, the first physical contact we've had in 8 years. Her skin is soft, familiar, wearing rings that represent promises made to someone else. "Walter, please, I know I hurt you, I know what I did was terrible, but destroying what I've built won't fix anything. It won't give you back those years." I look down at her hand on mine, remembering other times she'd touched me like this, when she was asking for something she knew I didn't want to give, when she was manipulating me into agreeing with her plans, when she was managing me the way she managed everything else. "You're right," I say, pulling my hand away. "It won't give me back those years, but it might prevent you from stealing any more." I stand up, leaving money on the table for coffee I never ordered. She looks up at me with an expression I recognize but have never seen directed at me. Fear. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know yet. But this conversation isn't over, Carrie. Just because you're done running doesn't mean I'm done finding you." I walk away without looking back, though I can feel her watching me, until I turn the corner. My hands are shaking as I unlock the rental car, adrenaline and anger and 8 years of suppressed grief finally finding their voice. The drive back to Florence passes in a blur of olive trees and ancient stone walls. I keep replaying the conversation, her words, her casual admission that she'd rather let me believe she was dead than deal with the inconvenience of divorce. She jumped. While other people were dying, while rescue workers were risking their lives, while I was sitting at home wondering why she hadn't called to say she'd made it safely to port, she was jumping overboard with false documentation and a plan to disappear forever. By the time I reached the hotel, one thing is crystal clear. This isn't over. She made her choice 8 years ago, and I've been living with the consequences ever since. Now it's time for her to live with some consequences of her own. The call from Martha comes at 3 in the morning, Florence time. I'm lying awake anyway, staring at the hotel ceiling, replaying every word of my confrontation with Carrie when the phone buzzes against the nightstand. "Walter, I'm sorry to call so late, but it's Eleanor. She's in the hospital." My stomach drops. "What happened?" "She fell trying to get to the bathroom around midnight, broke her hip. She's stable, but—" Martha's voice wavers. "She keeps asking for Carrie. She's completely confused about where she is when it is. The doctor says the trauma has made her dementia worse." I'm already reaching for my clothes, my mind calculating flights, logistics, the impossibility of being where I need to be quickly enough to matter. "I'll catch the first flight home." "Walter, there's something else. Frank's not handling this well. He's convinced something terrible has happened to you too. He tried to call the police to report you missing." Of course he did. Frank's stroke-addled brain can't process the concept of international travel or time zones. In his reality, I left without explanation, and now Eleanor is in the hospital, and his entire support system has collapsed. "I'm coming home," I tell Martha, "today." After I hang up, I sit on the edge of the hotel bed, holding my head in my hands. Eleanor is 81 years old with a broken hip and advancing dementia. Frank is 83 and can barely manage his own medications, let alone a medical crisis. They need me. But they're not the only ones who need something from me. I call Giulia Rossi, despite the early hour. "I need everything you can find about Carrie's financial arrangements," I tell her. Bank accounts, property ownership, anything that connects her old identity to her new one. That will take time and access to records that aren't exactly public. I'm flying back to the United States today. My wife's mother is in the hospital, and I need to know what I'm dealing with before I decide what to do next. There's a pause. Your wife? But I thought, my wife, who died 8 years ago, but turned out to be living in Florence under an assumed name. Yes, that wife. Julia is quiet for a moment, processing this information like the professional she is. I'll have something for you within 24 hours. Where should I send it? I give her my email address and hang up, then start packing with the mechanical efficiency of a man whose life has just shifted back into crisis management mode. The inheritance papers go into my carry-on bag, along with Uncle Theodore's letter and the keys to properties I may never see again. The flight home is a blur of airports and delays and recycled air that tastes like regret. I land in Boston 12 hours later to gray October skies and the smell of impending winter. Martha meets me at the hospital, her face drawn with exhaustion. She's sedated right now, she explains as we walk through corridors that smell like disinfectant and despair. The surgery went well, but she's very confused. She thinks it's 1985 and she's waiting for Carrie to graduate nursing school. Eleanor looks impossibly small in the hospital bed, her hips stabilized with pins and screws that will never fully heal at her age. Frank sits beside her, holding her hand and talking softly about things that happened 40 years ago. "Walter," he says when he sees me, relief flooding his face. "Where have you been? Eleanor's been asking for you." I don't correct his confusion about who Eleanor was asking for. Let him believe she wanted me instead of the daughter who abandoned them both. "I'm here now," I tell him. "Everything's going to be okay." But nothing is okay, and we all know it. Eleanor's break marks the beginning of the end, the moment when independent living becomes impossible and difficult decisions can no longer be postponed. She'll need round-the-clock care now, supervision, assistance with everything from eating to bathing. That night I sit in their kitchen surrounded by pill organizers and medical bills, calculating costs I can't afford. A nursing facility that can handle Eleanor's needs runs $8,000 monthly. Frank could probably manage at home with part-time care for another few months, but not alone, not with Eleanor in a facility and me working full-time to pay for it. My laptop chimes with an email from Julia. The subject line reads, "What you asked for and what you didn't." Her research is thorough and devastating. Carrie didn't just disappear. She systematically transferred money from joint accounts into offshore holdings weeks before the cruise. Small amounts, never enough to trigger alerts, but totaling nearly $80,000 by the time she died. The life insurance payout I eventually received? Carrie had increased the policy 6 months before the cruise, doubling the coverage and adding provisions that would pay out even in cases where the body was never recovered. But it's the final document that makes my blood run cold. A power of attorney signed by Eleanor 3 years ago when her dementia was still mild, giving Carrie authority over her parents' financial and medical decisions. A document that was never revoked because everyone believed Carrie was dead. Technically, legally, Carrie still has the right to make decisions about her parents' care. I called Julia immediately, despite the 6-hour time difference. How is this possible? How can a dead person have power of attorney? Italian records show Maria Elena Rossi as alive and well, Julia explains. American records show Carrie Holloway as dead but never legally declared incompetent. The power of attorney remains valid until formally revoked or challenged. What does that mean practically? It means if your wife surfaces and claims her parents, she has legal standing to do so. It means she could move them to Italy, put them in facilities there, control their inheritance. The inheritance, Eleanor and Frank's modest savings, the equity in their house, the small life insurance policies they've maintained, maybe $200,000 total, but enough to solve Lorenzo's business problems if Carrie can access it legally. There's more, Julia continues. Lorenzo's architectural firm is in serious trouble. They owe contractors, suppliers, banks. The villa is mortgaged to the ceiling. If he can't find money soon, they'll lose everything. Suddenly, Carrie's presence in Florence makes perfect sense. She's not there permanently. She's positioning herself for a rescue operation, waiting for the right moment to resurface and claim her parents' assets before they die and the inheritance goes to probate. I hang up and stare at the documents spread across the kitchen table. 8 years of sacrifice, of honoring promises, of putting their needs before my own, and she's been planning to swoop in at the end and claim credit for everything. The next morning brings news that forces my hand. Eleanor's doctor wants to discuss care transitions and end-of-life planning. Frank's blood pressure is dangerously elevated, stress-related according to his cardiologist. They both need decisions made, arrangements put in place, family members who can take responsibility for what comes next. Family members like the daughter who supposedly died 8 years ago but has never been legally declared dead. I drive to the lawyer's office with a plan forming in my mind. Not revenge, exactly, but justice. Carrie made her choice to disappear, to build a new life on the foundation of our destroyed one. Now she can live with the consequences. The lawyer, a woman named Patricia Chen who specializes in elder care, listens to my story with the poker face of someone who's heard everything. "You want to have your wife declared legally dead," she summarizes, "even though you now know she's alive. I want to protect her parents from someone who abandoned them 8 years ago and might return to exploit them in their most vulnerable moments." That's not exactly how the legal system works, Mr. Holloway. You can't declare someone dead if you have proof they're alive. Then what can I do? Patricia studies the documents I've brought, the power of attorney that gives Carrie control, the medical reports that show Eleanor and Frank's declining capacity. You can petition for guardianship yourself. Argue that the person who holds power of attorney has been absent for 8 years, hasn't participated in their care and therefore has effectively abandoned her responsibilities. Would that work? It might. But if she surfaces and challenges it, claims she was incapacitated or unavailable due to circumstances beyond her control, it could get complicated. I think about Carrie sitting in that cafe in Fiesole, healthy and happy and living a life funded by money she stole from our joint accounts. Incapacitated is not a word that applies to Maria Elena Rossi. How long would the process take? With their current medical status and clear documentation of abandonment, maybe 6 weeks for temporary guardianship, 3 months for permanent. I authorize her to file the paperwork that afternoon. Eleanor and Frank Holloway deserve protection from the daughter who chose to let them believe she was dead rather than deal with the inconvenience of caring for them. That evening, I sit in their living room, surrounded by 8 years of accumulated medical equipment and pill organizers and the detritus of lives slowly ending. Frank is asleep in his chair, his breathing labored. Eleanor is back from the hospital but confined to bed, confused about why she can't walk, asking repeatedly for the daughter who will never come. My phone buzzes with a text from an international number I don't recognize. "I heard about Eleanor. I'm sorry, please don't do anything rash. We need to talk." I stare at the message for a long time, then delete it without responding. She's right. We do need to talk, but not the kind of conversation she's hoping for. I call Julia one more time, with a question that's been nagging at me since I left Florence. "The children Carrie adopted, Lorenzo's triplets, what happened to their mother exactly?" "Car accident, according to the records, but—" Julia pauses, the hesitation of someone who's found information she's not sure she should share. "What?" "The accident was 6 weeks after Carrie arrived in Italy. And the woman who died? She was healthy, young, no history of medical problems, but she'd been asking questions about Lorenzo's new girlfriend, trying to verify her background. The implication hangs between us like a toxic cloud. You think—" "I think Maria Elena Rossi has been very lucky in her timing. I think she's had remarkable success in removing obstacles to the life she wanted." I hang up and sit in the gathering darkness, processing what Julia has just suggested. Carrie didn't just abandon one life to build another. She may have actively eliminated competition for the life she wanted. Eleanor calls from her bedroom, her voice weak and confused. "Walter, is Carrie home yet? She promised to bring dinner." She's not coming home, Eleanor, I tell her gently, but I'm here. I'll always be here. It's a promise I intend to keep, no matter what it costs me. And if Carrie wants to challenge that, she's welcome to try. But this time, she'll be fighting someone who knows exactly who she really is. The guardianship hearing is scheduled for a gray December morning when Boston feels like the edge of the world. Eleanor has been in the care facility for 6 weeks now, her broken hip healing slowly while her mind drifts further from shore each day. Frank visits her every afternoon, though she rarely recognizes him anymore. I'm reviewing notes with Patricia Chen in the courthouse hallway when she arrives. Carrie walks through the doors like she owns the building, dressed in expensive clothes that whisper money and confidence. Her hair is perfectly styled, her makeup flawless, and she moves with the assurance of someone who spent 8 years perfecting the art of reinvention. Behind her walks a man I recognize from photographs, Lorenzo Benedetti, tall and distinguished and completely unaware that the woman he married is someone other than who she claims to be. He holds her arm protectively, scanning the courthouse like he's expecting an ambush. "Mrs. Holloway," Patricia murmurs, "I take it that's your supposedly dead wife." "That's her." Carrie sees me, and her step falters for just a moment before she recovers her composure. She says something to Lorenzo in rapid Italian, and he nods, taking a seat on a bench while she approaches us. "Walter." She extends her hand like we're business associates meeting to discuss a contract. "Thank you for taking care of them while I was away." The audacity of the gesture, the casual rewriting of 8 years of abandonment into a temporary absence, makes my jaw clench. I don't shake her hand. "Carrie. Or should I call you Maria Elena?" Her smile doesn't waver, but something sharp flickers in her eyes. "Carrie is fine. I've come to resume my responsibilities as my parents' caregiver." After 8 years of being dead? After 8 years of recovering from trauma that left me unable to care for anyone, including myself. She's good, I'll give her that. The explanation is just plausible enough to create reasonable doubt, just vague enough to be unprovable. Patricia was right. This is going to be complicated. "Your Honor," Patricia begins when we're called before the judge, "Mr. Holloway is seeking permanent guardianship of Eleanor and Frank Holloway based on 8 years of continuous care and the prolonged absence of their only daughter, who held power of attorney." The judge, a woman in her 60s with gray hair and tired eyes, studies the documents we've submitted. "And now the daughter has returned?" "Mrs. Holloway claims to have been incapacitated due to trauma related to a cruise ship accident 8 years ago," Patricia explains carefully. "However, there is evidence suggesting she was not incapacitated but rather living abroad under an assumed identity." Carrie's lawyer, an expensive-looking man who clearly specializes in making problems disappear, stands smoothly. "Your Honor, Mrs. Holloway suffered severe psychological trauma in a maritime accident that left her unable to function normally. She spent years in recovery, during which time her brother-in-law graciously cared for her parents. Now that she has recovered, she wishes to resume her filial duties." "Mr. Holloway," the judge addresses me directly, "you've been caring for these individuals for 8 years without compensation or legal authority beyond the power of attorney held by Mrs. Holloway?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Why didn't you seek guardianship earlier when it became clear that Mrs. Holloway was not available to make decisions?" It's the question I've been dreading, because the honest answer reveals the depth of my own denial. "I believed she was dead, Your Honor. I was honoring what I thought was her final wish." The judge nods slowly. "And Mrs. Holloway, you've been absent from your parents' care for 8 years, during which time they've both experienced significant health declines and mounting medical expenses. Can you explain this absence?" Carrie stands, her posture perfect, her voice steady. "Your Honor, I suffered severe PTSD following the cruise ship accident. I was unable to function, unable to make rational decisions. I spent years in treatment facilities, both in the United States and abroad, working to recover my mental health." "Do you have documentation of this treatment?" "Some records were lost when I moved between facilities, but I can provide what's available." Of course she can. Carrie always was meticulous about covering her tracks. "Your Honor," I interrupt, "may I present additional evidence?" The judge nods, and I hand Patricia a folder that contains Julia's research. Bank transfer records showing systematic movement of money before the Cruize, evidence of the false identity creation, documentation of her marriage to Lorenzo Benedetti 7 years ago. Patricia summarizes the findings while Carrie's face grows paler with each revelation. These documents suggest that Mrs. Holloway's absence was not due to incapacitation, but rather a deliberate decision to abandon her responsibilities and create a new life abroad. Carrie's lawyer objects, demanding authentication of foreign documents, challenging the chain of custody, raising procedural questions designed to muddy the waters, but the evidence is overwhelming and everyone in the room knows it. "Mrs. Holloway," the judge says finally, "do you wish to respond to these allegations?" For the first time since she walked into the courthouse, Carrie looks genuinely uncertain. She glances back at Lorenzo, who's staring at her with growing confusion and concern. "Your Honor, the trauma affected my judgment. I made decisions I'm not proud of, but I'm ready to take responsibility now. After 8 years of letting your brother-in-law bear the financial and emotional burden of your parents' care, after allowing him to believe you were dead, I never asked him to grieve for me." The words land in the silent courtroom like a slap. The judge's expression hardens. "Mrs. Holloway, you held legal authority over these individuals' care and abandoned that responsibility for 8 years while living abroad under an assumed identity. During that time, Mr. Holloway has provided continuous care at significant personal and financial cost." "Your Honor," Carrie's lawyer tries to interject, but the judge continues. "Furthermore, the evidence suggests that your reappearance coincides with your parents' declining health and the prospect of inheritance decisions. This court finds your motivations suspect." I watch Carrie's carefully constructed facade begin to crumble. Behind her, Lorenzo stands abruptly and walks toward the exit, his face a mask of betrayal and disgust. "Lorenzo, wait," Carrie calls, but he doesn't stop. The judge grants me permanent guardianship 15 minutes later, along with authority to make all medical and financial decisions for Eleanor and Frank. Carrie's power of attorney is formally revoked, and she's ordered to pay restitution for the money transferred from joint accounts before her disappearance. As people file out of the courtroom, Carrie approaches me one last time. "You've destroyed everything," she says quietly. "My marriage, my family, my life." "I didn't destroy anything, Carrie. I just stopped letting you destroy mine." She studies my face for a moment, perhaps looking for some trace of the man who used to agree with everything she decided, who used to let her manage his life along with everyone else's. "What happens now?" she asks. "Now you go back to Italy and explain to 3 children why Mama has to go away. You explain to your husband why you lied about who you were. You live with the consequences of your choices for the first time in 8 years. And you?" I think about Eleanor, who asked for her daughter until the day she stopped asking for anything. About Frank, who still believes Carrie is coming home someday. About the inheritance that will pay for their care and maybe, eventually, allow me to build something resembling a life of my own. I keep the promises I made. I take care of the people who needed taking care of. I do what you should have done." She nods slowly, then turns and walks away without looking back. Through the courthouse windows, I watch her cross the street toward a taxi where Lorenzo waits with his bags already loaded. Even from this distance, I can see the defeat in his posture, the way he doesn't look at her when she gets in the car. 6 months later, I get a letter from Giulia Rossi. Lorenzo divorced Carrie 3 weeks after returning to Italy. The children are living with his sister while he rebuilds his business and his life. Carrie has disappeared again, though whether she's assumed another identity or simply left Italy isn't clear. The letter includes one final piece of information. The life insurance company that fought Carrie's death claim for 3 years has filed charges for insurance fraud. Interpol has issued a warrant for Maria Elena Rossi in connection with financial crimes in multiple countries. It seems Carrie's talent for reinvention finally caught up with her. I'm sitting in the garden of the assisted living facility where Eleanor and Frank now live, reading Julia's letter when Frank shuffles over and sits beside me. He's having one of his good days when the past and present align just enough for conversation. "She's really not coming back, is she?" he asks quietly. I fold the letter and put it in my pocket. "No, Frank, she's not coming back." He nods, unsurprised. I think I always knew. Carrie was never good at staying when things got difficult. We sit in comfortable silence, watching Eleanor in her wheelchair by the fountain. She doesn't recognize either of us anymore, but she seems peaceful, her face turned toward the afternoon sun like a flower following light. "You stayed, though," Frank says. I stayed. "Thank you for that." It's the first time he's thanked me for anything in 8 years. The words settle in my chest like a weight lifting rather than landing. That evening, I drive to Uncle Theodore's apartment in the North End, the property I inherited and never thought I'd use. It's small but comfortable, with windows that face east toward the harbor. I've been thinking about moving here, starting fresh in a space that isn't filled with medical equipment and memories. The apartment comes furnished with Uncle Theodore's books and photographs, evidence of a life well lived. On the kitchen table, I find a letter he left for me, different from the one the lawyer gave me in Florence. "Walter," it begins in his shaky handwriting, "if you're reading this in the apartment, it means you've decided to stop taking care of everyone else and start taking care of yourself. Good. It's about time." He goes on to explain that he'd been watching my life from a distance, seeing how I'd sacrificed my own happiness to honor obligations that were slowly killing me. The inheritance wasn't just money and property. It was permission to choose myself for once. "Carrie was never worthy of the devotion you gave her," he writes. "I met her once at your wedding, and I could see what she was even then, someone who took everything and gave back only what served her purposes. You deserved better. Walter, you still do." The letter ends with practical advice about the properties, the income they generate, the possibility of a different kind of future. But it's the postscript that makes me smile. The woman who runs the coffee shop downstairs is named Helen. She's a widow, about your age, and she makes the best cannoli in Boston. Ask her about her garden sometime. Trust me on this. I fold the letter carefully and look around the apartment that Uncle Theodore designed as my sanctuary, my escape route, my second chance. Tomorrow I'll visit Eleanor and Frank, make sure their care is properly managed, handle the business of helping them through whatever time they have left. It's a responsibility I'll never abandon, a promise I'll always keep. But tonight, for the first time in 8 years, I'm going to think about what I want. Maybe I'll walk downstairs and try Helen's cannoli. Maybe I'll ask her about her garden. Maybe I'll finally learn what it's like to live a life instead of just honoring one. Outside my window, Boston Harbor stretches toward the horizon where cruise ships dock and passenger trains carry people to new destinations. The same harbor where Carrie supposedly drowned 8 years ago, where her lies began and ended. I pour myself a glass of Uncle Theodore's wine and toast the sunset, the silence, and the strange truth that sometimes losing everything is the only way to find yourself. Carrie was right about one thing. We all make choices about the lives we want to live. It just took me 8 years to realize I was allowed to make one too.